once again, right here with the crossover. I'm Brian, and that's Robbie. We're going to get into it. Yeah, here we go, man. We're going to get into it for this week. We're going to start off with Mavericks Raptors. It was a big Friday night game at ACC in Toronto. The East League Raptors against one of the big contenders in the West. Two of my favorite teams. I'll just put it on record. I found it a fascinating game. What do you think about Robbie?
I thought it was a good game. It was very competitive throughout. I mean, one thing I like about this Raptor team, you can never really count them out.
Nope.
They're a resilient bunch. Even, I mean, I was watching the game with the last couple of minutes. I even said out, I was like, man, this one's over. I was literally about to change it. A couple threes got hit, and we're right back in there. So they're a very resilient bunch. I mean, obviously, the news coming out of that game is DeRozan's injury. I think from what I saw today, he's out possibly 4 to 6 weeks with a torn abductor muscle.
Yeah, it's pretty much a groin.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We'll see how they survive without him. I think you made a great point yesterday for all the DeRozan haters out there. Let's see how Yeah,
we're gonna find out a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You'll see how much you're going to miss him right now.
Right. I think that's going to be interesting to see from that standpoint. I think a couple of things I would watch for as Raptor fans. Watch the free throw discrepancies in this case as DeRozan's left the team now. Can they keep at the pace they were going before? That's one thing, they maintain that. Second thing is, now it's pretty much put up or shut up time for JV and Ross. Ain't no more crutch and kind of wait and see how you're doing. Yeah. You got to produce now. That's all it comes down to it.
So... I mean, a couple points with the actual game. I think ball movement was a big thing that I noticed from the game. If you're looking at assists, so Dallas had 27 assists compared to 17 for Toronto.
Right.
It was a lot of one-on-one play, a lot of guys just really trying to do it themselves. And that definitely has to change. I mean, and you just touched on it right there. More consistency from Jonas.
Yeah.
He had 13 boards, but he had only 8 points.
Well, I'm not letting Ross off the hook either.
Oh, I haven't gone to Ross yet.
Okay.
That train's never late.
Exactly. Yeah, nice.
But I mean, with Jonas, he hasn't had 3 straight games where he scored more than double digits all year.
Right.
And it's that up and down with his offense that's the thing. And like when we talk about consistency with him, and even consistency on the defensive end. From Jonas as well, because I mean, throughout the duration of the game, like you'll see in stretches, he'll play solid D, but it's not there for the entire duration of the game. And specific to Ross is a guy. I mean, I think he had 7 points about 23 minutes or so. And again, another guy very inconsistent so far, and he just has. I mean, when you look at Ross, some of the shots he takes are very difficult. Highly contested shots.
Right.
And I mean that's a big problem right now.
Yeah, no doubt. I would just say just one last point about on the Raptor side before we get to Dallas. Raptors have a troubling trend right now. Watch out here, folks. I make this my own little segment, my little feature in this case here. The watch out moment in this case here. Watch out for teams that have length in the front court when it comes to Raptors. You see it with Miami, you see it with Chicago, and now we're seeing it there just now with Dallas. Teams with length in the front court are driving the Raptors crazy. We'll see how it plays out throughout the year, but something to maintain. It's something to watch. That's all I got to say about that front. Dallas's point. So here's my point on Dallas. Dallas is probably some of the best defense Dallas played all year. Like they were in jerseys on Friday night. I mean, it was impressive. I mean, to Toronto's credit, they had Dirk pretty much contained. They had the right matchups for him, but overall Chandler played like a beast. They had nothing to stop him. I thought Dallas had some really nice plays running for Chandler. They didn't figure out how to deal with the lobs. The lobs were coming from all sorts of angles. It's ironic how the lob stat that came from Tom Haverstraw earlier in the week, how profound it was after. I was watching the game, just kept on hearing his vignette about that. Because every time you look around, I was like, boom, him or right, just cramming down dunk everywhere. Monte, as you said before, Monte's been great in Dallas. I think, I mentioned it last week. He's the dude. I mean, Dirk has got the face, he's the face of the franchise. But if anyone's a Dallas fan, right now the offense going through Monte was getting tight. I said so last week, and we saw it again against Toronto, man.
You did. You were very prophetic with that. You were
Exactly. I
very
know my
prophetic with
team,
that.
man.
I was hearing your voice when I was watching that
I
game
know my
on
team,
Friday
man. I know
night.
my team, man. And once again, Chandler Parsons guy, and I was like, yeah, all right game, but once again, for a guy getting paid 15, you said 16 million. I lost track how many pennies I'm missing on that one.
Yeah,
Come,
in that neighborhood.
yeah, we're coming off the bench, and the dude's just like invisible at times out there. He had some good moments. His length did bother Toronto at times too, so I'll give him his due on
And
that.
he did have a couple of key offensive rebounds
Yeah,
for Dallas in the
yeah,
fourth.
yeah.
So
So I Dallas to me, looked pretty good. It was a game you expect to see with two teams, and definitely, it was leading to our next conversation. You gotta wonder a little bit. Dallas playing a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, considering what
yeah,
their owner was saying earlier this week.
yeah,
Toronto in this case looked like they thought the game was gonna be over. Very similar to Cleveland a week ago. It's like,
yeah.
oh, we're up 10-0. It's like game's done. Let's go home, pack it up, boys. And it's like, nah, man, you got to play another 44 minutes or 40 minutes, wherever it was, man. You can't just think the game's over at that point. So, real good game. Obviously, this league, we'll wrap it up there. We'll get into the topic of the week now. So, this week's big topic coming out this week in the NBA is the consideration of NBA realignment proposed by Mark Cuban, talking about how he would move certain teams from the West and move into the East and vice versa. Off the top of my head, I remember he had quite a few of the teams pretty much from the kind of the Southwest Conference. Then he had like New Orleans, San Antonio, Dallas, and I think someone else. Can't remember who it was.
Yeah, it was the Spurs.
Spurs moving to the East. On the other
And
side would pretty much be your old school Central Division teams: Detroit, Chicago, and maybe
Milwaukee and Indiana.
And Indiana going
Yeah.
to the West. Chicago used to be the West back in the 70s, folks, so that's not really that surprising. Chicago's also been in the West in the NHL at times, as well as Detroit, even though I think I always thought Detroit in the NHL being the West was a joke because of the whole time zone situation. You
Yeah.
could possibly get away with Chicago or Milwaukee, depending on how your league's set up.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, there's been a lot of facts out here saying that what's the out. I'll say my point on it quickly. I'll get to my point about the overall thing. Some interesting ideas going on there, but you hear about the cyclical aspects of things, and I get the cyclical aspect of it. I've had that theory for a while, but when you see the numbers and the data keeps coming back to me, I don't like realignment overall, so I'm not a big fan of it, the whole idea of that. But when I see the numbers and the data coming back of what's going on with the East versus West, where this cycle is not changing really.
It's not. I mean,
not.
I think that the West has been the dominant conference for about, I would say, the last 14 years. I mean,
I had 15
since
in
the
my
end of the
head.
90s, basically.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, and I think you start wondering. And I guess just let me throw it here. I have a few theories of why that's the case in this case here. One is, I think in this case, I think the GMs in this case are a little more responsible and just better GMs in the West and the East. I think what's happened in the East Coast is we have a lot of big markets in the East Coast. I think a lot of the GMs and the ownerships play towards the big headlines instead of really thinking about how to build a team. So your New York's, Philadelphia's, Boston to a lesser extent, they're looking like, hey, let me get the big splash and that mindset. Two, I think free agencies cause a big issue of that. Dudes want to go to warm places a lot of times. There ain't a lot of warm places in the Eastern Conference, unless you're going down south to Florida. That's about it. What a coincidence. Who's the team that's been the dominant team this decade for the most part from Miami in this case.
Yeah.
So, and Orlando's been in finals with Dwight Howard. So
Exactly.
right. So when you look at it from that perspective, you start asking yourself, like, dudes don't want to be in that type of thing. And then also you throw in another big thing. A lot of the cities that have East Coast, a lot of the Eastern Conference cities are in states where taxes come into play.
That's the big one.
And that's the one where the West Coast has that advantage, where a lot of the Western Conference teams have a lot of states that have no state taxes in a lot of their states.
That's the big one right there.
Right, and I think those three things have created, and then fourth, I think there's one last one: poor drafting from Eastern Conference teams.
Mm-hmm.
When it's all said and done, when you look at it, it's like you sit there and shake your head, like what are you doing? So there's some teams there. So that's my theory on it. What do you think about it?
I mean, I think it's an interesting topic in terms of the realignment. Cuban brought that up, and I think Adam Silver made a comment saying that the league would actually, they're open to taking a look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily that something will change, but they're open to taking a look at it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we know last year in the finals they switched up the finals format, so so I think we've seen a willingness from since Silver's come on board to change certain things
Yeah.
when it comes to formatting and things like that. But it's interesting. I mean, I can see the pros, the cons of doing it. From a fan perspective, if you just do the top 16 teams in each conference, you got teams in the West that your team's winning 50 games a year, and you're not making playoffs.
Right.
And I mean, I can understand from a fan perspective if you're a fan of Phoenix, Sacramento,
Hey, Dallas.
Dallas.
Dallas
So
barely got in last year.
Dallas was the 8th seed last year, and I think that they would have been
third seed.
the third seed in the East.
Yeah, I think they had the same record as the Raptors. I think, or one win more, or they've been the 4 seed, maybe the 4 seed. So the Raptors won the tiebreaker. They're tied.
Exactly.
So it might be the 4 seed.
So I mean, you definitely see that. I think, but then on the East Coast too. I mean, you take away if you knock out some of those sub 500 teams that are getting the 78 spot. That's I guess in terms of overall exposure, NBA exposure. So it's an offset. You know, like the guys in the West, you're going to be getting that exposure from those teams that wouldn't make it out West. But then you're obviously going to be losing some markets out East as well too. It's interesting. I mean, I'm not fully decided if I'm for or against it just yet. I think as a fan, I mean, you want to see the best basketball possible. You want to see the best teams at the big dance. So it's an interesting topic, and just taking a look at I think this year's standings right now. Out west, Phoenix has the eighth seed, and if they're 10-7, and if they were in the East, they would be the 5th seed, I believe.
Right.
So you move up some spots there.
Right.
So it does make a big difference. You probably have to, in terms of you're trying to think of logistics and format things like that. Yeah, there would be some changes and a little more travel for some teams. But it would be interesting.
Okay. Well,
it definitely would be interesting.
I would just say this part. Check this out. I'll put a link below on this one, because I thought it was a really good article from Tom Ziller of SB Nation. He gave his proposal on what he would do when it came to realignment. Just to give a rundown, pretty much to give you a kind of a high-level setup what he has. So he ends up having 5 divisions, kind of in a geographical format. You have an Atlantic division, which pretty much keeps the teams that we know as part of the Atlantic division today. But he'll add Washington back into it like the old days. So Washington will go back to the Atlantic division. He has the Lakes, which is kind of your old Central division. But what he would do with this one, the Central Division, he would move, I think in this case here, he'll move Minnesota into that group now and add them to the group. So it'll be Bucks, Bulls, Pacers, Pistons, Cavs, and Wolves. Atlantic will have Raps, Celtics, Knicks, Nets, Sixers, and Wizards. Then Southeast, then he would move the Hornets over and the Grizzlies over. So then you have the Heat, Magic, Pelicans, Hornets, Hawks, and Grizzlies. And what he has is his Big West or Southwest group would be your Nuggets, Suns, Thunder, Spurs, Mavericks, and Rockets. And then your West Coast, Cali Love, he's got all the West Coast guys here. Jazz would then move from that division, which would have been the old Big West, into the Pacific. Utah, LA, Clippers, Warriors, Blazers, and Kings.
Yeah.
Now what he would propose is that from a postseason standpoint, it'll be a reseeding, almost like a March Madness, 1-16 straight. Then you seed as you want from 1-16 for your seeds. Now, this is probably the most drastic type of decision, but what I do like about it, it still keeps the geographical things, so you still can keep most rivalries together.
Yeah. Bulls,
Pacers, Bulls, Cavs, Pistons, Bulls, like that type of stuff, or whatever the case would be, Lakers, Warriors, stuff like that. You keep them together for the most part. And and in this case here, you get the 16 best teams when it's all said and done. Now, for folks that want to go down this route, be wary, okay? Because it ain't always going to be Lakers, Knicks, whatever the case be in the finals. You may end up with the Minnesota Timberwolves Utah final one of these days. Don't be griping about that then when the ratings come in for that. Be wary about that. That's all I got to say.
Yep, and that's a trade-off.
That's the trade-off.
That's the trade-off. You'll get a more exciting playoff bracket, but that's the trade-off. You'll get some of these small market teams in there, and we'll.
Quote Kanye, and there's the conflict. No, no doubt. That's what you're gonna get. So just warning people that
Exactly.
you're not getting no big market team that you can save you in this case in the finals. Maybe coming from the East Coast, Glamour City, or in this case you get LA you might still get LA all the time. That might be great, but you might not get what you're getting when you have that scenario work in 1 versus 16.
And Minnesota fans, if your team's on the brink of the finals, don't be surprised if in Game 7 you get some questionable calls there.
No doubt, man.
Don't mess up that money.
What? Well, if that was set up last year, San Antonio, Oklahoma City would have been the finals, which in this case had marquee players in it. It might still work out okay, but it may not always be the case.
Exactly.
Anyways, it's fun to look at. I'll post that article below. Really interesting read. It's just a pretty short read, but he gives a good logic of what he's doing. He figures out a way to get around the schedule as well too, and how he would do that. I think he had each team in their division will play each other, I think, 3 times in their division, and then he had 2 times for everybody else. Or he'll do like an NFL rotation. You would play certain divisions 3 times throughout the year and rotate it every few years. So at first it might be rough. You might get a real weak division 1 year, and then next year you might get a tougher one. So in some ways it uses like an NFL system for a rotating schedule with different teams that you play more than others. So it's a good read though. Anyway, man, once again, it's been fun, folks, man. Keep the views up, keep the posting up, keep the links up, the tweets, the comments. We love it, man.
Keep it locked.
Keep it locked, folks, man. We got more to come. Look out, man. We're gonna try to do something for you for the end of the year.
We got a Christmas special for the people.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt.
We got the Christmas special for the people.
We're gonna see what Cole, we're gonna see who's been naughty, who's been nice for 2014, man. So we'll get into that later on, man. But once again, man, take care, folks, and peace. Oh yeah, once again, hey, one more thing: subscribe above, comments below. Can't forget that. Anything else for you, Ravi?
No, you can follow me at Mr. Ravi _Porvita on Twitter.
And you can find me at Beyond Locker Room, short form RM. Now we're closed, I think.
That's it.
That's it. Peace.